Welcome you all. I am Baron Baptiste and welcome to Disrupt the Drift. We're going to talk today about purpose, the mystery of purpose. There's so many people in the world right now lost without purpose or trying to figure out what to do next in life, the next act in life, the next more meaningful move in life, work in the world, what to do. And maybe you're stuck where you are. Maybe you're unfulfilled where you are. You sense there's something higher, something greater to aim for, but you're not connecting up to it. David, how you doing?
Fantastic. Always great to be with you, Baron.
Yeah, what do you say about this mystery of purpose, and how does someone find purpose and make that purpose as something real in the world, in the physical universe, taking something from an idea and making it real, but finding that higher purpose and the alignment to it in life?
Yeah, it's a quintessential question that has to be answered during, hopefully, the formative stages of a person's life. But it doesn't matter, because no matter when you discover that you're looking for that mystery of your purpose in life, that's the best place to start. So I'll start with a quote by Fyodor Dostoevsky.
That's a mouthful.
Dostoevsky. He says, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. Yeah. And I have to tell you that most of us are other directed. All of our entire lives, we are having people always telling us what we can or should not do. And that is a constant, like, echo chamber. It's hard to escape from the idea that there's forces out there that are trying to shape and mold you and direct you. But also bear in mind that is not necessarily, and most of the time it isn't, in your best interest. So what's in your best interest is to say, okay, what am I here for? And what is it that I'm inclined toward? Because I think we all have natural inclinations towards some meaningful purpose to accomplish during this lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. I think most people have a sense that there's some calling, something greater that they're wanting to do. And there are few people that actually take that path. It takes something, it takes some courage, or it takes some clarity to begin taking the actions that move you in that direction. And because it also comes with risk. It's risky to your own identity. When you start taking on doing something new means giving something up, because your identity, maybe you're doing something in life that it's working. The kind of work you're doing in life, it's working. You're good at it or good enough at it. It's paying your bills. It's giving you that sense of security. And your identity also likes to be right. So it's like you're doing something and it lets you be right. But when you start, if you step out of that, it confronts your identity, but you're also at risk of being wrong, at failing, of not looking good, of people around you don't necessarily agree with you stepping out and being at risk, because people know you for who you are, who you have been. And I'll speak for myself. And I think a lot of people had this experience. A lot of people I talk to are in this transitional place in life. But I think in the pandemic was so disruptive for people. Before the pandemic, like in my life, I had my work in the world. I had focus. It was a clarity of path. It had purpose. It had meaning. I was making a contribution in the kind of work I was doing. But even at that point up into the pandemic, yes, it was working. I had a strong identity around that, but I also was inwardly not satisfied. I always sensed there's something bigger, something greater beyond what I was doing. And for quite a few years, I was always threatening or speaking to, this might be my last year of doing this. So I'd commit to a series of trainings or programs or the work I had been doing. I'm like, this is going to be the last year. But then that year would pass, and then everything was working. There was momentum. Things in my business and enterprise were continuing to grow and at momentum. And so I was stuck in this kind of flow. And then the pandemic hit. It was very disruptive to my world, my business world, and work in the world. And yet, as I was going through, it was like forced quit. Everything I was doing and that my organization was doing was brick and mortar, is out in the world, events, programs, courses, trainings, seminars, like that. And then all of a sudden, forced quit. But it was also, there was a blessing in that, because I was like, wait, this is maybe the exit I had been looking for. And then I committed to myself to give myself just even a couple of years to find, what do I really want to be doing next? Actually different than that, not what I wanted to be doing next. I'll frame it. It was more like, what's calling me? What's calling me? What's pulling me forward? What's of real interest to me that's meaningful in what I'll call my third act in life? And I found myself, so over last 2 or 3 years, in this place of, okay, like an intentional plateau. I'm going to stop for a while. And then one of the things was like, at a certain point, was it maybe about a year and a half ago, we started this podcast, and I was like, I'm going to just start putting my voice out. And here's my point. You do have to start initiating and actually doing things in the world that start moving you into a new direction. But by doing the work in the world and in new ways is where you actually discover what your work is, and you discover where the directions you want to go. If you just sit around and watch Netflix, and for me, my default is YouTube. I can just go down rabbit holes on YouTube and pass time, but that doesn't really open up anything new. So if you're sitting around waiting, I always like to say that purpose isn't an archaeological dig, because a lot of people I know are always in the, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And they're trying to find it, I'm going to dig deeper into myself and try to, but it's not so much an archaeological dig. It's more of a architectural build. And what I mean by that is you start doing things that are moving you into the direction of what you're feeling pulled toward, interested in, called for, where it's up to something greater than yourself. And what I mean by up to something greater than yourself, it's something that is maybe a threat to your current identity. So it's bigger and greater than yourself, the self you now are or have been. It's disruptive to that old identity, and the needing to shake and drop that old identity like a snake sheds a skin. You need to be in the work of the world. And then the last thing I'll say is, because whatever you're doing now, so even if you're stuck in your life and you're doing something you don't want to be doing, well, up your standards in what you're currently doing. Up your standards of how you show up and do the work, because the work you're doing now maybe isn't where you want to be, but it's the bridge to the next thing. And as you keep up leveling, upgrading your current standards of how you're showing up in the world and the work you're doing, this becomes the bridge to the next thing. I think a lot of people, what's that term that was really popular during the pandemic, where people were holding jobs? It was like quiet quitting, right? They're showing up doing the bare minimum and just drifting along, but that doesn't elevate how you're showing up to then be the bridge to the next thing. You're really not your resume. Resumes never really mattered. They've never mattered to me. They're not even in my point of view. It's more the work you're doing and how you're showing up. That becomes your resume, so to speak. And that's where new doors begin to open. And then you naturally bridge into the next iteration of something that is greater than the self or even the work you've been doing. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I want to slam on the brakes right here.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, the reason why their life isn't turning out the way they want it to or thought it would is because they are trying to find something that makes them happy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, this is what Ralph Waldo Emerson said about it. He says, the purpose of life is not to be happy. What? I thought the purpose of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, the pursuit of it, yes. But it goes on to say, the purpose of life is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well.
Yeah.
And so if we look at those things right there, just the idea to be useful, you could be a cog in a machine, and that could be considered a form of use. To be honorable, that's a very important thing. To have honor, it defines so much about what your life actually ends up being and what you leave behind, who you are to other people, who you are to yourself. And to be compassionate means take a minute and step into somebody else's shoes for just a moment before you judge them. And with all of that said, to have it make some difference that you have lived. And that's an important component, because I have to tell you, and I'm sad when I see billions of people in the world who have come into this world, have no control over their circumstance, although they do have, in some cases, who they choose to lead them. And even that is a super important component of who and what your life means and gives your life purpose. And then the last part is to have lived well. So meaning being secure in the choices that you make about why you do and who you want to be. And so I think a lot of people are just really missing the whole point of life, which is it is not to be happy. And I had a friend of mine, and I think this guy, Bob Just. Remember Bob Just?
Oh, yeah. He's a good guy. I like Bob Just. Yeah.
I used
to work for them like 30 years ago at the radio station.
He said to me one time, happiness is the end result. And that's one of the most profound things anybody said. When you live your life the way you ought to, and when you find that purpose, here's what Bishop T.D. Jakes said. I love this guy. If you can't figure out your purpose, figure out your passion. For your passion will lead you right into your purpose. Now, see, that's a beautiful thought in and of itself, because everybody has something that they love to do. Whatever it may be, if it's fishing, if it's art, if it's music, well, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's bricklaying, it doesn't matter. The purpose of life is not to be happy. It's to find that meaningful, useful space in the world where you could turn around one day. I remember when I started building houses when I was 18 years old. I was a carpenter and many other things in my life. But I remember one day I was involved in building a really beautiful cottage-style home. And it took about 1.5 years to build. But one day I was driving down this road where the house is, and I looked over and I said, I contributed to the building of that house. I mean, in other words, there's a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction to look over at something beautiful and see that you were a part of that. Yeah. And so that's just, anyway, that's my bigger thought.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's growing, right? To keep growing as a human being, to keep working on yourself, within yourself, and then putting that into the world through the work you do in the world. And things organic. Even this podcast I shared with you earlier, a friend of mine pulled up the stats on this podcast, right? And we haven't advertised this podcast, haven't marketed the podcast, but this podcast, Disrupt the Drift, is rated in the top 2% globally.
It's phenomenal. It's absolutely
out of
phenomenal.
all the I think there's just under 4 million podcasts or something out there, and it's ranked top 2%. I'm like, that's cool. And we're just showing up and growing, and every episode's getting better, deeper, greater substance, clarity, but it's happening in real time as we're doing this. As you do something in life and you keep growing. And I know in my entrepreneurial journey, when I look all the way back from 30 so years ago, when I first started, I'd find, speaking to passion, right? What you're speaking to, what TD Jake said about passion, find passion. If you're not finding your purpose, we'll locate passions. I would find something that would spark me, interest me, inspire me. I would start doing that thing in the world, making it real with real people in real situations, boots on the ground. And then I would just be so committed to that and evolving that, refining that, making that product, whatever. If I was showing up to teach a class or a workshop or working at the radio station, whatever I was doing, the passion would give me that's where I would find my purpose in that. And then I would keep growing myself. I would grow as a human being, as a person, and how I was showing up. I would grow and refine the thing I was doing. And then you get good at it. You get some expertise, you get skills, you get mastery. But then I would start burning out if I wasn't keeping growing and evolving into whatever the next iteration. And at many points in that kind of entrepreneurial journey, I would start feeling constrained. I would lose inspiration or something. I knew there was more. And then at different points, I would hit bottom, like rock bottom. And I'll call that a crucible point. And in that crucible point, that's where you are left with a choice. You get bitter, you get resentful, you become like the victim, leaf in the wind, or you turn that rock bottom into rocket fuel, or you allow it to make you better and find, okay, use that as manure, so to speak, to grow and stay open and find that next passion point, that next thing that is pulling you. And it is like a pull. There's something that pulls us. If you're present enough in life, you start getting present to something pulling you, and then you act on that. If you don't act on it and you just wait around for it to, okay, I'm waiting for my purpose to discover my purpose and let it hit me, you might be waiting a long time. There is the acting on it and making and pursuing something. And maybe you discover that's not the thing, but it will lead you to the thing. But it's being purposeful in the works you're doing. It's like Emerson said, do the thing and you will have the power.
A couple of great quotes here just to validate what you were saying. Roy Bennett said, if you have strong purpose in life, you don't have to be pushed. Your passion will drive you there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then Mark Twain, this is one of the most important things that you can consider. And it goes back to what I was saying. Your whole life, you've been told what you can, should, or shouldn't do. And he says the two most important days in our life are the day you were born and the day you find out why.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
And here's another one for you. This is an unknown, attributed to unknown, but it says life without a purpose is like a body without a soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's like the unexamined life isn't worth living. You have to keep examining yourself in a way. You're aware, you have awareness, self-awareness in such a way that becomes the access to the life that is worth living.
Here's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
People who have anxiety, believe it or not, are closer to the truth than people who seem to be perfectly well adjusted and happy in life. And the reason why is because anxiety is a quiet little knowing that there's something missing.
Yeah. Something missing, or you're missing the mark. You're not on the authentic path for yourself. And that's where at each step, you do have to keep raising your standards and how you're showing up at each step, how you're performing at each step.
You've coined this phrase, selling out on yourself, which to me, it makes me want to like sit down and just cry, because I think people do sell out of themselves all the time. Every day it's a choice that you make, one choice at a time, like sands in the hourglass, and pretty soon you've sold out so much on yourself that you don't have a self left.
Yeah.
So you can reclaim your life, by the way. That means it's not too late. Even if there's 2 grains of sand left in the hourglass, you can still reclaim your life, but you've got to address the anxiety that's associated with that. And so if you use drugs or alcohol or smoking, vaping, whatever, to satiate that anxiety, then what you're doing is each one of those moments that goes by that you could have spent in a little bit of agony, let's say, feeling the pain and the pressure of life and wondering about it, those are moments you can never recover.
Yeah, the pain you feel, whatever the expression of the pain, the anxiety, the inner conflict, the inner anguish, that pain is the access to purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to be with that pain, not brew in it, not stew in it, not use it as more fuel of what a shitty person you are or something, but you actually use it. There's something to discover for yourself in the pain. The pain is connected to that calling of your conscience, the inner conscience that's calling you forward as you don't follow the inner promptings of your conscience, that inner knowing. When you don't follow it, that's when it starts emerging as that anxiety, that anguish, that despair. But when you start getting quiet enough and you listen and you act upon those inner promptings of and maybe it's just small acts of kindness, small acts of getting out there and coming from generosity with people, helping people, serving, being of service, again, being up to something greater than yourself. But was it Jesus who said faith without works, without action is dead?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're having faith, you're following the inner promptings of that inner knowing, and what you start accessing is a flow state. As you start getting out there and following those promptings and really doing things in the world, you start getting into a flow state. And that old identity starts drifting into the background, starts falling into the background. There's less of a sense of I and self-concern and you start following that. The other thing, the last thing I'll say here, and then I want to hear from you and we'll wrap up. We'll put a ribbon on this one and wrap it up. But as you start moving forward, if you're always looking to your feelings and how you feel, and that you have to feel happy about it, it has to feel good, that will thwart you, because the feelings come and go. And when the old identity is being threatened, that's where it gets louder, and it can actually make you feel like you're going off track. But maybe you're not going off track. It's just that old identity. You're going off track in relationship to that old identity that wants to keep you on the same old track. And so you'll have you'll have feelings, whatever forms of feelings, and whatever that inner voice is speaking. But you have to keep stepping in front of that, and let it be there, but distinguish the difference between that conscience, that inner knowing, and the promptings of the calling of your conscience. Distinguish that still small voice of truth within yourself from the noise and the ongoing chatter in the head and the feelings that go along with that voice and that chatter in the head. You've got to be aware and get quiet, meditate every day. Get still, get present, stay present, get present to a greater presence, and start following that voiceless voice, that inner knowing. And that's when you open up to a greater state of flow. And you know you're on the right track. It won't always feel good, because when you get into risky and new the unknown, it comes with its own kinds of whatever, the old identity, or just you're in the unknown, the uncertainty. You have to be able to stand and stay present in the face of uncertainty, in the face of no agreement in your environment, people who doubt you. That's the other thing. Distancing yourself from the voice within yourself that is old, and then the voices externally that are trying to keep you in the box that you've been in. Any last thoughts before we wrap this one?
Yeah, I got 2 thoughts here.
Okay.
And Pastor Rick Warren said something very profound. He said, the greatest tragedy is not death, but life without purpose. And then Robert Burns said this, the purpose of life is a life of purpose. And now I want to make a reference for my Jewish brothers and sisters out there, about the Passover, because I've often thought about this.
Because you're Jewish, yeah.
My father was Jewish, and so I have that. He was a Sephardic Jew. But the Passover is a very important component, if you think about it, because it's the Jewish holiday that celebrates the Exodus from Egypt and the sparing of the firstborn. And when they put the lamb's blood on the door, it was a signal to the angel of death that they weren't subject to this terrible tragedy that was about to happen. They were spared from it because they put the lamb's blood. Now, that was a sacrifice that was made for the sake of sparing the firstborn of those homes. And I just want to say that if you have this life, you've been spared to live it. But I want to say, if you have a life, you've been spared to live it. And so you must find the purpose for which you came into this world. And again, as Barron just said, be still and know. Get quiet long enough to allow the truth of your life to catch up with you and discover what's there waiting for you, a whole new direction down a different path, or maybe the same one, because maybe you're already doing what you love, but you still have conflict in other areas of your life. Just spend time with yourself first.
Yeah, very good. All right, you all, thank you. And if you'd like us to respond to your questions, send an email to disruptingthedrift@baronbaptiste.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Again, the channel is Disrupt the Drift. Leave comments, subscribe, like the video. And
one more thing.
Yeah.
People might enjoy my book.
Yeah.
Outside In, the psychopolitics.
Outside In.
Yeah, of manipulation and control. And it goes into how we end up the way we are, because we are programmed. Everything, we're stuffed like a sausage with other people's ambitions, desires, and needs. And they can find that at my website at escapeyourmindsprison.com.
All right. Awesome, y'all. Yeah, and you can check me out at baronbaptiste.com as well. Yeah. Peace be with you all. Keep disrupting the drift. Keep living bold. And till next time.